The sleek vessel of the Galactic Hegemony descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing with practiced precision on the United Nations Plaza in Geneva. It was a warm summer day, and the gathered crowd of officials and media personnel shielded their eyes as they looked up at the alien craft. The ship's polished surface reflected the sunlight, making it almost painful to look at directly. From the vessel emerged delegates of an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. They walked down a ramp that extended from the ship, their movements fluid despite their alien anatomy. Their skin had a bluish tint, and they stood taller than most humans. At the front was Ambassador Tech, the lead representative of the hegemony. His six-fingered hands were clasped in front of him, and his large compound eyes scanned the crowd with what humans correctly interpreted as thinly veiled contempt. Secretary General Kim stepped forward to greet the aliens. She was a woman with a calm demeanor who had led the United Nations through several global crises. Behind her stood the representatives of Earth's most powerful nations, all united in this historic moment. "Welcome to Earth," Kim said with a bow. Tech did not return the gesture. He simply activated a small device that translated his clicking speech into human language. "Empress Neri sends her greetings," Tech announced, his voice emerging mechanically from the device. "Your world is now recognized as territory of the hegemony. Tribute collection will begin within one lunar cycle." The crowd murmured in shock. This was not the friendly first contact humanity had hoped for. Instead of greetings and cultural exchange, they received demands and threats. Secretary General Kim maintained her composure despite the unexpected declaration. She smiled politely, though her eyes hardened. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Ambassador," she replied. Tech tilted his head, a gesture that seemed to indicate surprise. He clearly had not expected resistance. The hegemony had conquered hundreds of worlds, most of which surrendered immediately when faced with the advanced technology and overwhelming numbers of the empire. "This is not a negotiation," Tech responded, his translator giving his words a cold, flat tone. The other alien delegates shifted their positions, moving to create a more threatening formation. The security personnel around the plaza tensed, hands moving closer to their weapons. Director Park, head of Earth's Space Defense Initiative, stepped forward. He was a man in his 50s, with gray hair and the confident bearing of someone who had prepared for this moment for decades. "Perhaps you should inform your Empress of what your scanners failed to detect," Park said calmly. He raised his hand, revealing a small device. When he pressed it, a holographic display appeared in the air between the humans and aliens. The display showed a detailed map of the solar system, with Earth at the center. At first, it appeared normal, the planets orbiting the sun, the asteroid belt, the familiar layout of humanity's home system. Then Park pressed another button, and the image changed. Hundreds of massive vessels suddenly appeared from seemingly empty space. They were positioned strategically throughout the system, near Earth's moon, in Mars' orbit, around Jupiter and Saturn, and even in the distant reaches near Pluto. The crowd gasped. Even most human officials were seeing this reveal for the first time. Earth had been building in secret, preparing for a moment many had hoped would never come. Tech's compound eyes widened, the facets catching the light and reflecting it in a rainbow of colors. His posture, previously confident and somewhat aggressive, now showed signs of uncertainty. "Impossible," he said, his clicking speech sounding more rapid even through the translator. "Your species cannot have such technology. Our intelligence indicates you have only recently achieved basic space travel." Director Park smiled. "Your intelligence is outdated, Ambassador. What you see before you is Earth's defense fleet. 200 supercarriers, each more advanced than anything your hegemony has encountered before." The hologram zoomed in on one of the carriers, showing its massive scale. Each vessel was over 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapon systems, and protected by shield technology the hegemony had never seen before. "We've been watching the stars for longer than you realize," Park continued. "We detected your empire's expansion 70 years ago. We've been preparing ever since." Tech turned to consult with the other delegates, their clicking language fast and urgent. The humans waited patiently, aware that this revelation had changed the balance of power in this first meeting. "The Empress will not be pleased," Tech finally said, turning back to face the human representatives. "That would be unfortunate," Secretary General Kim replied. "But perhaps instead of displeasure, she might consider another approach. We are not interested in tribute or subjugation, but we are open to peaceful relations between equals." Tech seemed to consider this for a moment before responding. "I will relay your message and your display of strength to the Empress. But be warned, the hegemony has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. We do not take challenges lightly." "This is not a challenge," Kim said firmly. "It is simply a statement of fact. Earth will not be conquered." Tech and his delegation returned to their vessel without further words. The ship's engines hummed to life, and it rose into the sky, quickly becoming a speck and then disappearing entirely. As the alien ship departed, Secretary General Kim turned to Director Park. "How long do we have?" "The nearest hegemony fleet is 3 weeks away," Park replied. "Admiral Yu has already begun moving our carriers into defensive positions." Kim nodded grimly. "Then we have 3 weeks to prepare for either peace or war." She looked up at the sky where the alien ship had vanished. Humanity had revealed its hand. Now they would wait to see how Empress Neri would respond. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the HSS Resilience, Earth's first supercarrier, and the flagship of humanity's hidden armada. The massive bridge bustled with activity as crew members monitored their stations with practiced efficiency. Through the viewport, he watched as the hegemony's diplomatic vessel fled Earth's orbit, accelerating rapidly until it was just a distant point of light. "They're running home to tell their Empress about us," Lee said quietly. He was a tall man, with gray hair at his temples, his uniform crisp and his posture perfect after 40 years of military service. Captain Sue approached from the command center, her tablet displaying real-time updates from across the solar system. She had served under Lee for 15 years and knew his thoughts almost before he spoke them. "All carriers reporting ready, Admiral," she announced, her voice clear and confident. Lee nodded, his expression serious. "Deploy according to protocol Aegis." The order echoed across communication channels to all 200 supercarriers hidden throughout the solar system. These vessels had been Earth's best-kept secret for decades, hidden in plain sight within the asteroid belt, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and beyond Neptune in the distant reaches of the solar system. Each carrier was nearly 20 kilometers long, massive by any standard, with sleek lines that belied their enormous size. Their hulls were made of materials developed in secret labs on Earth and the Moon, combining strength with stealth capabilities that had allowed them to remain undetected by passing alien ships. Lee watched on the main display as the fleet began to move. It was a sight that filled him with both pride and apprehension. 3 decades of secret construction had led to this moment. 3 decades of politicians setting aside their differences, of nations pooling their resources, of the best minds on Earth working together toward a common goal. "Resilience to all carriers," Lee said into the ship-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The hegemony now knows of our existence, and we can expect a response soon. Take your assigned positions and maintain stealth protocols until engage." Captain Sue stood beside him, watching as the tactical display showed the carriers moving into a complex defensive formation throughout the solar system. Some took positions near Earth and the Moon, others spread out to cover the approaches from deeper space, while still others positioned themselves near key resources and colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. "Do you think they'll attack immediately?" Sue asked quietly. Lee considered the question. "No. First they'll send scouts, then a small battle group to test our defenses. The Empress won't commit her main fleet until she knows what she's facing." "And what will she be facing, sir?" Sue asked with a slight smile. Lee allowed himself a small smile in return, something unlike anything the galaxy has seen before. The supercarriers contained technology that combined human ingenuity with elements gleaned from carefully observing passing alien ships over the decades. Earth scientists had studied alien propulsion systems from a distance and improved upon them. They had analyzed weapons signatures and developed better defenses. Most importantly, they had created technologies that the hegemony had never even considered possible. 2 days passed with the fleet in position. The tension on the Resilience grew with each passing hour. Crew members checked and rechecked their systems. Pilots ran simulations in their quarters. Engineers fine-tuned the massive engines and weapon systems. Lee was in the middle of a briefing with his command staff when the alert sounded. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected approaching the outer system, announced the sensor officer. Configuration matches Hegemony Battle Group Alpha pattern. 27 ships in total. Lee moved to the main display. Show me. The screen shifted to show a group of Hegemony warships emerging from hyperspace near the orbit of Saturn. They were sleek, predatory vessels, clearly designed for conquest rather than exploration. At their center was a command ship nearly 2 kilometers in length, impressive by most standards, but dwarfed by the human supercarriers. "They're not even trying to hide their approach," Captain Sue observed. "They still think we're an easy target." Lee nodded. "They expect to find a primitive world with a few crude defense vessels. Let's let them maintain that illusion a little longer." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal all carriers to maintain stealth protocols. Let the hegemony come deeper into the system." The Hegemony Battle Group advanced confidently toward Earth, their formation suggesting they expected minimal resistance. Their sensors swept the system but detected nothing unusual. The human supercarriers remained hidden, their advanced stealth systems making them virtually invisible. When the alien fleet reached the orbit of Mars, Lee gave the order. "All carriers, disengage stealth systems. Execute Protocol Thunderbolt." Across the solar system, the human supercarriers suddenly appeared on hegemony scanners. The massive vessels seemed to materialize out of nowhere, their enormous forms dwarfing the alien ships. On the bridge of the Resilience, Lee could imagine the shock and confusion on the faces of the hegemony commanders. "Open a channel to the hegemony command ship," Lee ordered. When the connection was established, Lee spoke clearly and confidently. "Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Lee of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have entered protected space without permission. Power down your weapons and engines immediately, or we will be forced to take defensive action." There was a long pause before a response came. The translator converted the clicks and whistles of the hegemony language into human speech. "This is Commander Deck of the Hegemony Imperial Forces. Your deception will not save you. The Empress has ordered your world's submission, and her will shall be done." Lee sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that." He turned to Captain Sue. "Target their propulsion systems only. Let's show them what we can do without destroying them." As the hegemony ships began to power up their weapons, the human supercarriers moved with surprising speed and grace for vessels of their size. The Resilience led the way, its advanced targeting systems locking onto the engines of the hegemony command ship. What followed was not the battle the hegemony expected, but a display of technological superiority that would be reported back to Empress Nari with alarm and disbelief. The human fleet disabled the hegemony vessels one by one, without destroying a single ship. Within an hour, the entire battle group was drifting powerless in space, their engines disabled, their weapons offline. "Open the channel again," Lee ordered. When Commander Deck's face appeared on screen, his alien features couldn't hide his shock and anger. "Return to your Empress," Lee said simply. "Tell her what you have seen here today. Tell her that Earth wishes for peace, but we are prepared for war." On the hegemony capital world of Doral, Empress Neri paced furiously before her war council. The Grand Chamber, with its soaring ceilings and ornate decorations taken from 100 conquered worlds, seemed to amplify her rage. Her six-limbed form moved with dangerous grace as she circled the massive holographic display, showing the humiliating defeat of her battle group. "These humans dare to resist," She snarled, her facial tentacles writhing with emotion. They have no place in the galactic order. They are barely more than animals who stumbled into space. The 12 members of her war council sat in silence, none willing to be the first to speak after watching the footage of 27 Imperial warships disabled by the human fleet. The supercarriers had moved with impossible precision, their weapons cutting through hegemony shields as if they weren't there. Finally, General Jun cleared his throat. As the Empress's chief military advisor for the past 40 cycles, he had earned the right to speak frankly. Still, he chose his words carefully. Your Magnificence, preliminary reports suggest their technology exceeds our own in several key areas, he said, his voice steady despite the risk of delivering such news, particularly in propulsion, weapons accuracy, and stealth capabilities. Impossible, she hissed, turning to face him directly. Her eyes, with vertical pupils like a cat's, narrowed dangerously. They've been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Our empire has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. General Jun gestured to the holographic display. The evidence is before us, Your Magnificence. Somehow, they have developed or acquired technology that rivals or exceeds our own. Their carriers are larger than anything in our fleet, and they appear to have hundreds of them. Or perhaps, said Minister Tak from his seat at the far end of the table, they are creating illusions to appear stronger than they are. Empress Neri seized on this suggestion. Yes, they must be using trickery. No primitive world could build such a fleet in secret. In the shadows of the chamber, Duke Han exchanged meaningful glances with several other council members. The Empress's reign had grown increasingly tyrannical over the past decade. Dozens of worlds had been stripped of resources until they could barely support life. Any resistance was met with orbital bombardment. Many in the council had begun to question her rule, but none dared challenge her openly. This human resistance might present an opportunity for change. What do we know of these humans? Asked Duchess Mia, her voice deliberately calm. Perhaps we should learn more before committing to a full-scale conflict. They are divided into many nations, replied Intelligence Director Ko. Or at least they were until recently. Our data suggests they have united in the face of our arrival. A temporary alliance that will fracture under pressure, Empress Neri said dismissively. Prepare the main fleet. We will crush this resistance and make an example of Earth that the galaxy will not soon forget. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A full-scale attack would commit nearly half of the hegemony's military might to one conflict. If the humans truly were as powerful as they appeared, such a move could be disastrous. Your Magnificence, General Jun said carefully, perhaps a diplomatic approach might be worth considering. If they truly have technology that rivals ours, they could be valuable allies rather than subjects. Empress Neri whirled on him, her facial tentacles fully extended in a display of imperial rage. Allies? You suggest treating with these primitives as equals. The hegemony does not have allies, General. We have rulers, and we have subjects. That is the natural order. As the Empress continued her tirade, Duke Han caught the eye of General Jun. A subtle nod passed between them, unnoticed by Neri. Plans long discussed in whispers would now need to be accelerated. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Global Defense Council gathered in their underground headquarters beneath the rebuilt United Nations complex in Geneva. Unlike the opulent war chamber of the hegemony, this room was functional and purpose-built. The walls displayed real-time information from the supercarrier fleet and Earth's defensive systems. President Cho, elected to represent all of Earth's nations in this crisis, sat at the head of the table. Around him were the military and scientific leaders who had guided the secret defense program for the past 3 decades. The hegemony battle group has retreated to the edge of the system, reported Admiral Lee via holographic projection from the Resilience. But our long-range sensors detect significant activity in their territory. They're mobilizing a much larger force. General Moon, commander of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward. We could strike now, she suggested, her expression intense. Their empire is overextended according to our intelligence. Many of their subject worlds would rebel if given the opportunity. If we hit their key military installations before they can fully mobilize, we could end this quickly. Several others around the table nodded in agreement, but President Cho shook his head firmly. "We defend, but we don't conquer," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of conviction. "That's what separates us from them. We did not build our fleet to become a new empire. We built it to ensure our freedom." "With respect, Mr. President," General Moon persisted, "a preemptive strike could save countless lives on both sides. The Empress will not stop until she has conquered Earth or been defeated." Dr. Min, the chief scientist behind many of the Supercarriers' advanced systems, spoke up. "Our technology gives us an advantage, but that advantage may be temporary. The longer we wait, the more time they have to analyze our capabilities and develop countermeasures." President Cho looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each council member. "I understand the tactical arguments for a first strike, but humanity stands at a crossroads. For centuries, we've told stories about alien invaders coming to conquer Earth. Now we face that very situation, but with a critical difference. We have the power to be the invaders instead." He stood, placing his hands on the table. "The path we choose now will define our species for generations to come. Yes, we could strike first. Yes, we could potentially conquer the hegemony before they conquer us. But then we become what we've always feared, conquerors from the stars who subjugate others because we can." "Then what do you suggest, Mr. President?" asked General Moon. "We prepare our defenses. We reach out to the subjugated worlds of the hegemony not as new masters but as potential allies, and we send a message to Empress Neri, offering one last chance for peace." In the silence that followed, Admiral Lee's holographic form nodded with approval. "The fleet will stand ready, Mr. President, for defense, not conquest." As the council continued their debate, none of them were aware that on the hegemony capital world, the seeds of rebellion were beginning to take root. Rebellion that would soon reshape the galaxy in ways neither humanity nor the Empress could predict. The hegemony attack came 3 weeks later, just as Earth's leaders had predicted. 5,000 warships emerged from hyperspace at multiple points throughout the solar system. The sudden appearance of so many vessels created ripples in space that Earth's sensors detected immediately. Warning alarms blared across every human settlement from Mercury to the moons of Neptune. On the bridge of the HSS Resilience, Admiral Lee stood calmly as the tactical display filled with red markers representing enemy ships. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, their months of drills now paying off in this moment of crisis. "They've arrived in greater numbers than we anticipated," Captain Sue reported, her face grim but determined. Lee nodded, "but not greater than we prepared for." He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All carriers, activate defense protocols. Remember your training. We protect our home." Across the solar system, the 200 human supercarriers began to move. Their massive engines glowed blue against the blackness of space as they took up their assigned defensive positions. Near Earth, 30 carriers formed a protective sphere around the planet. Others moved to defend Mars colonies, the mining operations in the asteroid belt, and the research stations orbiting the gas giants. The hegemony fleet split into 5 main attack groups, targeting key points throughout the system. Their formation was textbook, the same tactics they had used to conquer 1,000 worlds before Earth, but they had never faced an opponent like humanity before. Near Mars, Captain Sue's carrier group of 20 vessels faced off against over 800 hegemony warships. The red planet's orbit became a theater of spectacular warfare, unlike anything the solar system had witnessed. The hegemony ships fired salvos of energy weapons, expecting to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer numbers. Gravitational lensing systems online. Sue ordered from her flagship, the HSS Dauntless. Redirect their fire. The technology, developed in secret by Earth scientists, created localized distortions in spacetime. As the hegemony weapons fire approached the human carriers, It suddenly curved away, redirected back toward the attacking fleet. The aliens watched in disbelief as their own weapons fire turned against them, disabling dozens of their ships in the first exchange. In the Jupiter defense zone, Commander Jin led another carrier group tasked with protecting the valuable helium-3 mining operations on the gas giant's moons. His flagship, the HS Guardian, deployed squadrons of small, agile fighter craft, while the carriers themselves activated their specialized weapons. "Deploy quantum disruptors," Jin ordered, his voice steady despite the enormous hegemony force bearing down on his position. The technology, unique to Earth's fleet, sent out waves of energy that temporarily disrupted the quantum fields holding matter together. The weapons didn't destroy hegemony ships, but rendered them completely inoperable, frozen in space with all systems offline. Within minutes, hundreds of alien vessels hung helpless in space, their crews unable to do anything but watch as the battle continued around them. On the hegemony flagship, the Eternal Dominion, Empress Neri watched the battle unfold with increasing rage. The massive command vessel, 50 kilometers long and staffed by the elite of her military, had been positioned safely behind the main attack groups. Now she paced the command deck as reports of failures flooded in from all fronts. "Impossible," she screamed, striking the subordinate who brought news of another defeat. "How can these primitives resist the might of the hegemony?" General Jun stood at a respectful distance, watching his empress with growing concern. The battle was not going as planned. The humans' technology was unlike anything they had encountered in 10,000 years of conquest. "Your Magnificence," he said carefully, "perhaps we should consider a tactical retreat to regroup and—" "Retreat?" Neri hissed, her facial tentacles writhing with fury. "The hegemony does not retreat from primitives." She turned to her weapons officer. "Deploy the planet killer to Earth. If we cannot have it, no one will." Several officers exchanged alarmed glances. The planet killer was the hegemony's ultimate weapon, a device capable of shattering a world's crust and rendering it uninhabitable for millennia. It had only been used twice in the Empire's long history, both times as punishment for rebellion. Using it on Earth would violate even the hegemony's limited rules of warfare. Duke Han, who had accompanied the fleet as the Empress's advisor, but was really there to monitor her increasingly erratic behavior, stepped forward. "Your Magnificence, the use of such a weapon on an inhabited world of this development level is against our own laws." "I am the law," Neri screamed. "Deploy it now." The enormous weapon, a separate vessel almost as large as the flagship itself, detached from the fleet and began moving toward Earth. Its central chamber glowed with ominous energy as it charged its main weapon, a beam that would bore through the planet's crust and trigger catastrophic tectonic collapse. Earth's sensors detected the planet killer immediately. On the Resilience, Admiral Lee received the alert with a calm that surprised even his veteran crew. "Hess Resilience to all ships," he transmitted. "Continue defensive operations. I will handle the planet killer personally." The massive human flagship broke from its formation and accelerated toward the approaching doomsday weapon. Smaller hegemony vessels attempted to intercept the Resilience, but were quickly disabled by supporting human ships. On the bridge, Lee turned to his chief engineer. "Is Dr. Hoy's system ready?" "Yes, Admiral," came the reply. "Shield inversion is charged and standing by." The Resilience positioned itself directly in the planet killer's path. From the hegemony flagship, Empress Neri watched with savage delight, believing the human vessel was sacrificing itself in a futile gesture. "They see their doom approaching," she said, her anger momentarily replaced by cruel satisfaction. The planet killer fired. A beam of energy more powerful than 1,000 suns lanced out toward the Resilience. For a brief moment, it seemed the human vessel would be vaporized instantly. "Activate the shield inversion," Lee ordered calmly. The technology, developed in secret by Dr. Watt over 15 years of painstaking research, was humanity's ultimate defensive innovation. Instead of trying to block the incoming energy, the system absorbed it, channeled it through specialized conduits throughout the massive carrier, and then redirected it outward in a spherical wave. The planet killer's beam struck the Resilience, and then something remarkable happened. The energy seemed to flow into the human vessel, causing its hull to glow with power. For 3 seconds, nothing else happened. Then a wave of energy burst outward from the Resilience in all directions. The wave passed harmlessly through human ships, their systems specifically designed to be immune to this technology. But as it reached the hegemony fleet, thousands of enemy ships suddenly went dark, their power systems completely overwhelmed by the redirected energy. On the Eternal Dominion, even the backup systems failed. The flagship drifted powerless, its artificial gravity fluctuating. Empress Neri clung to her command chair as darkness fell across the bridge. What happened? She demanded. Restore power immediately. But her crew could only watch helplessly as, through the viewport, they saw the Resilience approaching, undamaged and very much in control. 6 months after the Great Battle, Earth had changed forever. The planet now hosted visitors from dozens of alien worlds. Ships from distant stars filled Earth's orbit, bringing diplomats, scientists, and refugees seeking a new beginning. On a bright spring morning in Geneva, Admiral Lee stood beside President Cho on a specially built platform overlooking Lake Geneva. Before them sat representatives from 50 formerly subjugated worlds of the hegemony. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors filled the seats, some breathing through special masks to adjust to Earth's atmosphere, others wearing protective suits against the sunlight. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history, President Cho said, his voice translated into 30 different languages simultaneously. Not an empire, but an alliance. Not subjects, but partners. Admiral Lee surveyed the gathered aliens with quiet pride. The victory over the hegemony had come at a cost. 12 human supercarriers lost, thousands of lives sacrificed. Yet Earth had prevailed not through destruction, but through defense and determination. Among the alien delegates, Duke Han sat in a position of honor. His blue skin and 6-fingered hands marked him as a member of the same species as the former Empress, but his gentle demeanor could not have been more different. After the battle, Han had led the peaceful revolution that transformed the hegemony's government. The Transitional Council pledges to make amends for the wrongs of the past. Han announced when it was his turn to speak. Under the guidance of the Alliance, we will help rebuild what the Empress destroyed. The mention of Nari caused a ripple through the alien delegates. Many had suffered terribly under her rule. Some had lost entire generations to her demand for resources and tribute. After the ceremony, Admiral Lee made his way to a secure facility beneath the rebuilt United Nations building. Here, in a specially constructed chamber, the former ruler of 1,000 worlds lived in comfortable but permanent exile. Empress Nari, now simply Nari, watched the proceedings on a monitor, her once grand regalia replaced by simple clothes. Her facial tentacles, once adorned with jewels to signify her imperial status, now hung plain against her blue skin. She turned as Lee entered, her vertical pupil eyes studying him carefully. "Admiral," she acknowledged with a small nod. The translator implanted near her throat converted her clicks and whistles into smooth human speech. "How are you finding your accommodations?" Lee asked politely. "Adequate," she replied. "Your species shows surprising mercy." Lee took a seat across from her. For a moment, they studied each other in silence, the human admiral who had defended his world and the alien empress who had tried to conquer it. "You could have destroyed us," she said finally. "When your ship redirected the planet killer's energy, you could have wiped out our entire fleet. Why didn't you?" "Because domination isn't our way," he replied simply. "The fleet was always meant for defense, not conquest." Nari made a sound that the translator didn't catch, perhaps a laugh, perhaps a scoff. "And yet you now find yourselves at the center of galactic power. 50 worlds look to Earth for leadership." "Not leadership," Lee corrected. "Partnership. There's a difference." "We shall see," Nari said. "Power corrupts, Admiral. I began my reign with noble intentions as well. Lee stood to leave. That's why we're dismantling most of the fleet. Power should be shared, not hoarded. As Lee left the facility, he received a message from Captain Sue. Her ship, the HSS Dauntless, had been repurposed as an exploration vessel and was preparing for its first mission beyond the former hegemony's borders. Unknown signals detected from the galactic core, her message read. Request permission to investigate. Lee smiled as he sent his reply. Permission granted. Explore, don't conquer. Across the solar system, the 200 supercarriers were being transformed. Some, like Sue's, were becoming exploration vessels, pushing the boundaries of known space. Others were being converted into humanitarian ships, bringing aid to worlds ravaged by the hegemony's centuries of rule. The HSS Resilience, once Earth's primary weapon of war, now served as a mobile diplomatic platform. Its vast halls, once filled with weapons systems and tactical displays, had been remodeled to host representatives from hundreds of worlds. Each section was carefully designed to accommodate different atmospheric needs, gravity preferences, and biological requirements. On its main deck, formerly Admiral Lee's command center, President Cho now met regularly with the Alliance Council. Today, they were discussing the rehabilitation of a mining world near the former hegemony center. The environmental damage is severe, reported a plant-like being from a world called Thorol. The people there have been breathing toxic air for generations. We can help, offered Dr. Min, Earth's representative for scientific matters. Our atmospheric scrubbers can begin the cleaning process immediately. In Earth orbit, the shipyards that had secretly built the supercarrier fleet now worked openly, constructing vessels designed for peace rather than war. Scientists from 100 worlds shared knowledge freely, creating technologies that benefited all. On Mars, the first interspecies colony was taking shape. Beings from 15 different planets worked side by side to build domes that could support multiple forms of life. Children from Earth played with young aliens, learning each other's languages and customs without fear or prejudice. As the first year of the Alliance approached its end, humanity found itself in a position no one could have predicted. They were not conquerors ruling through force, but caretakers helping to heal the wounds of a galaxy long divided by fear and oppression. Admiral Lee stood on the observation deck of the Resilience, watching Earth grow smaller as the ship prepared to visit another Alliance world. Behind him, representatives from 20 planets discussed cultural exchange programs and scientific cooperation. "Do you ever miss the old days?" Captain Sue asked, joining him at the viewport, "when it was just us against the universe?" Lee shook his head. "We were never meant to stand alone. Humans have always been at their best when building bridges, not walls." Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance around the sun, now just one world among many in an alliance that spanned the stars. Guardians of a new galactic peace built on respect rather than fear. The end.